Southampton Town Board to order on, what day is it today? The sixth day of March? I'm sorry? Can we start again? Can I do take two? I don't have it in front of me. All I have is the draft agenda. Janice, can you check to see what happened?
Rewind the tape.
Rewind the tape. We'll start it again.
Thank you, Charlie.
I must have left it on the table. All right, we're gonna start again here.
Yep, get your water.
I'll get my water.
You need some coffee?
I do, and a coffee.
It's gonna lose people at
All right, now we have the agenda.
People are at the edge of their seats
All
at
right,
home.
Charles, you ready? All right. Good morning. I'd like to call this work session of the Southampton Town Board to order on the 6th day of April, 2023. Please rise and join me for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier is not with
Councilman
us.
Bouvier has an excused absence.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
Okay, so we have four, one more than a quorum. We're in good shape and we can begin. So the first item of business is to review the draft agenda for the April 11th, 2023 Town Board meeting. You all should have a copy. So we have three public hearings, and this, by the way, is a 1 o'clock meeting here at Town Hall. It'll also be hybrid. The first one is a public hearing for the consideration of a one-year agricultural use agreement for 23 through 24 pursuant to Chapter 247 of the Town Code. And the second is a public hearing to consider the acquisition of lands of Jill Rappaport, 427 Little Noyak Path in the hamlet of Watermill. And the third is a public hearing to accept a deed of residual fee from Joseph F. Gaza for properties to be maintained as open space located at North Sea pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development right certificate in 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York. And then we get to resolutions, and tell me, John, will you read John's resolutions? Sure. All right, so Rick, you're the first.
Okay. Town Board Resolution ID 42990, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone and Councilwoman McNamara. Authorized change order for subaqueous water main crossings, Shinnecock Canal at Mashut Beach and Ponquag Bridge at Lighthouse Road.
Second one, 42942, authorized purchase of technology Cadillac Solutions from CDW-G using source small contract. 43017, authorizes supervisor to execute agreements with Sun 20 TV vendors for production assistance.
Town Board Resolution 43016, to authorize the supervisor to execute any and all agreements with Harris Govern, a division of N. Harris Computer Corporations, for an upgrade of their open form software solution. Town Board Resolution 42942, co-sponsored by Councilman Bouvier and myself, to authorize the supervisor to sign a satisfaction of mortgage on a community development block grant loan.
Town Board Resolution ID 42917, authorized supervisor to sign a contract extension with Mercury Marine for Mercury Marine parts.
43014, authorized supervisor to sign contract with H2M Architects, Engineers, and Land Surveying for professional services related to improvements to the building department entrance. 42901, authorized supervisor to sign contract with Nelson and Pope for professional services related to speed limit reduction at Big Fresh Pond Road in North Sea.
Resolution ID 43012, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara, authorized the supervisor to sign a no-cost extended contracts with Palace Electrical Controls Incorporated for the electrical portion, Philip Ross Industries for the plumbing mechanical portion, and East End Material DBA East End Group for the general construction for the wellhead treatment for the removal of iron and manganese at plant number 4.
Okay, 43011, authorized purchase and installation of pavers from Del Al Concrete Corp. for the Windsor Hart project using Suffolk County BPW contract. So that's actually the installation of the pavers. So the pavers are being produced by one company, Paver Art, and these guys will get the contract to assemble it. And we're looking to do the Hart opening on, I think it's June 26th, if I'm correct. I think it's the 10th anniversary of the decision that legalized same-sex marriages, the Windsor decision, for which the Edie Windsor, who the Hart is memorializing. So I think it's all going according to schedule, and appreciate all the work that everybody's been doing on it. All right, and you guys will all obviously get notified about the time. Place is obvious, it's right in front of Town Hall. 42915, oh, that's John.
42915, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier. Authorize the purchase of heavy equipment, parts, accessories, supplies, and related services from Omnia Partners, contract with Caterpillar.
Resolution 42921, authorize the supervisor to execute a 2023 license agreement with Suffolk County Community College for the use of Eastern Campus Pool for lifeguard training.
Yay.
Wow, finally.
That's good.
Finally,
John would probably want to be a co-sponsor on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, probably.
Let's put them on.
Very bold.
You know, I was very involved with that project when I was at the county. So, yeah, I'd like to co-sponsor too. You want to go on too, everybody?
Yeah, okay.
Will you put
Put
everybody on?
everybody on.
Everyone?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, 42521, authorize the supervisor to execute a contract extension with J&B Auto Salvage, Inc. for removal of abandoned junk and decommissioned vehicles.
Resolution ID 42913, authorize the supervisor to execute a donation agreement for the installation of an irrigation system at North Sea Community Park.
43010, to declare item surplus and authorize disposal of computer equipment.
42972, rescinds Town Board Resolution 2023-123, 2023-315, and authorize the supervisor to execute a contract with Nelson Pope Engineering, Architecture, and Land Surveying, PPLC, for professional services related to various projects.
43002, 2023 notice to bidders for a 2022 Ford F-250 Super Duty with open utility service body. 42925, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier, myself. This is 2023 notice to bidders of a 2022 Ford F-350 SRW 4x4 Super Cab. Okay. Town Board Resolution 42938, second notice to bidders for a 2022 Ford F600 dump truck, and that's sponsored by Councilman Bouvier.
42969, amends 23 adopted budget for ambulance districts. 43006, authorize expenditure from restricted account for the Windsor Hart project. 42997, establishes and appoints members to the Bel Air Cove Motel Advisory Committee. This is actually something we're going to talk about in work session. Just basically, Rick and I have been working on putting together an advisory committee to sort of review the two proposals, but also other proposals, including the passive park use. And we've put together a list of stakeholders in the community, but we'll review that in work session, and if later on, and if you guys want to make some changes, we can modify the bill. Hopefully, we'll make those changes before the agenda gets published. 42975, reappoints Jeremiah Collins to Conservation Board.
Town Board Resolution 42943, appoint Cecilia Gardner to the North Sea Citizens Advisory Committee.
42931, it's continuation of legal services by Coughlin and Gerhardt LLP to provide legal services regarding personnel matters relating to the Southampton Town Police Department for 2023. 42923, resolution of adoption amending various sections of the Town Code in connection with retail cannabis dispensaries within the Town of Southampton. We held the hearing on that.
42919, 2023 International Dark Sky Week.
Town Board Resolution 42918, this is authorization of cost reimbursement waiver for Hampton Bays High School Class of 2023 Commencement Parade, held on June 20th, 2023, from 6 o'clock to 7 p.m.
Sunday, if I could be added as a co-sponsor, please.
Certainly.
Town Board Resolution 42965, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier, authorization of cost reimbursement waiver for the Hand Aldridge American Legion Post 924 Annual Memorial Day Parade on May 29th, 2023, from 9 a.m. to 12
Have you
noon.
added to that, Sunday?
Yeah, me too.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole board.
ID number 42987, authorized temporary road closure and traffic pattern for Jobs Lane Bridge repair at Bridgehampton.
42962, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier and myself. Cost reimbursement waiver for I Tri Hampton's Youth Triathlon on July 15th, 2023, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Town Board Resolution 42967, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier again. Cost reimbursement waiver for the Remsenburg-Spionk Union Free School District Annual Memorial Day Parade on May 26th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
At 11:30?
To 11:30, 10 a.m. to 11:30. That would be a short one. My
That's a long
apologies.
walk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they're walking pretty fast. All right, 42857, accept resignation of Ashley Endexer, Senior Office Assistant in Human Resources. 42985, accepts retirement of Stephen Miller, Southampton Town Police Detective Sergeant. Yep. 42902 reinstates Jacqueline McKay to Senior Justice Court Clerk position in Justice Court. And the next one, 42800, accepts retirement of Jacqueline McKay, Senior Justice Court Clerk in Justice Court. And then 42573 appoints Selena Burbig to Justice Court Director in Town Justice Court. The 43001 appoints James Moran to Maintenance Mechanic 3 position in the Water District. The 42995 appoints Julie Fitzgerald to Associate Administrator position in Housing and Community Development. 42570 appoints Kurt Bayer to Custodial Worker 1 position in Municipal Works. 42863 appoints Matthew Palmieri to Records Management Assistant position in the Town Clerk's Office. 43000 appoints Merritt Miller to Maintenance Mechanic 2 in Senior Services. 42733 authorizes hiring of Charles Sturwald Jr., Police Officer Start. 42820 authorize reimbursement for drug court judges attendance at the New York Association of Treatment Court Professionals Conference, whereas the New York Association of Treatment Court Professionals held a conference in Saratoga. Why does it say that? I think that somehow the first whereas ended up in the title.
Yeah,
So can,
so,
yeah, so can we end it after professionals conference? And then we bring the whereas down into the body? Sunny, you got that?
Okay, so this actually is a whereas that is not where it's supposed to be. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, somehow the first whereas ended up bolded and in the title.
Okay,
All right. Authorize, I'm up to 42924, authorize sergeant to attend advanced crisis negotiation course. 42947 extends probationary period for automotive mechanic 5.
ID number 42914, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier. Notice of public hearing to amend Town Code, Chapter 312, Vehicles and Traffic, parking prohibited on portions of Windermere Court in Spionk.
Town Board Resolution ID 43004, notice of public hearing to consider authorizing the Triton Lane East Quogue Beach Parking Pilot Program.
Sunday, could I be added to that, please?
certainly.
So that's going to be April 25th at 6 p.m. And we should say a little bit about what that is, no?
Sure. I mean, we could do it at the meeting, but it's basically a pilot program to allow daytime beach driving or daytime beach parking on the beach. A little to the, it's actually, I think, I get the actual, it's a total of 150 feet between Hot Dog Beach and east of Triton Lane. And it's no more than 30 cars. It's a pilot program to open up an area west of the canal to daytime beach driving. And it's only on, let me say, Friday, it's between the Friday immediately preceding Memorial Day and the 15th of September between the hours of 9 and 6. And it's only on,
It's on Sundays, right? And holiday.
yeah, Sundays and holidays.
Holiday Mondays?
Yep.
Sundays and holiday Mondays. So currently, there's only one place in the town of Southampton where you could drive onto the beach and park during, I guess, the summer season or whatever, Memorial Day through, what is it, Labor Day? Something like that.
Okay.
So this would open up a second area, though limited in
Say that you're
scope east of the
gonna-
canal.
So Jim is going to amend it because right now it says between the hours of 9 AM and 6 PM, and it doesn't specify the days, so we're gonna add Sundays and holidays,
Just limited to Sundays.
limited to Sundays and holidays.
All right, so we should publish it in the correct form.
Right,
Yes,
right.
and Jim's
Make
gonna
sure-
get that
Make sure that
change.
it gets published, that's
Whoops,
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty big omission.
so, it's a small area, and we don't think it'll have any impact on Hot Dog Beach or the house to the east, because it's a small area. And give it a try, and I think people will be respectful, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so let's get at least the hours and days correct.
Yep.
All right, so, Jim, you'll get that to
Yep.
Sunday. Okay. Cindy, you're still up.
Town Board Resolution ID 40431, co-sponsored with Councilman Bouvier. Notice of public hearing to consider a change of zone from R80 to agricultural conservation and to consider acceptance of an agricultural conservation district easement for property located at 50 Jobs Lane, Bridgehampton, tax map as indicated, with corresponding amendment to the zoning map.
Town Board Resolution 42807, sponsored by Councilman Bouvier, accept a deed of residual fee from Joseph F. Gaza for properties to be maintained as open space located at North Sea, Suffolk County Tax Map 963-4-30.1 and 40.1 pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development rights certificate, and Section 247 of General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
Can I ask a question, not about that one, but the one before it where we're changing the zone from R80 to Agricultural Conservation District? Jim, is that a zoning category?
Is the agricultural,
Or maybe Janice, do you know? So we're changing the zone from, on a property from R80 to ACD, Agricultural Conservation District? Is that an actual zoning category?
It's an overlay.
Excuse me, good morning, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. That is the replacement of the Ag PDD, the new, so you're basically, remember, you're purchasing an easement and placing restrictions on the property. So it's not technically a zoning category, but it's the idea of an agricultural PDD. It's the new one.
We didn't get rid of Ag PDDs though, did we?
We did.
We did,
And that's
we
this.
changed.
Oh, and then we
the
changed-
title
And now
was
it's
changed,
this.
so it couldn't be upzoned.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, and we called it, instead of Ag PDDs, we called it Ag Conservation District.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
It's like an overlay where you purchase the development rights.
So is the underlying zoning still going to be R80?
It
No.
is technically, but you're taking away the
Preserves
development
it.
rights. So
Right.
there's no development rights under R80 anymore. Once you purchase the rights, then it's just an easement.
There are two,
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so then 42851, resolution of adoption accepting agricultural scenic and drainage easements in connection with the subdivision application of M4 Lumber Holdings LLC in Bridgehampton. And then I have,
Have to add on.
it's
You
just
can
one?
pass those
Just-
down,
just-
please.
All right, so
Thank you.
pass these down. All right, so there's one more. This has the ID number of 42897. It's a resolution setting a public hearing to consider amending Town Code Section 330-77 to increase the permitted required rear yard lot coverage percentage. And maybe Janice, you want to explain what this one is?
20 to 50%.
So, and Katie Garvin will present this information, but just to give you a little bit of background on where this came from, is that we find a lot of people wanting to put things in their side yard. And an older interpretation was as long as it's behind the house, the side yard didn't necessarily matter, but it is truly still a side yard. And the root of the problem, when you really look at it, is not the side yard. It's that there's a restriction on your rear yard. And so we're just trying to alleviate the pressure of people being not able to actually use their rear yard area to put the things they need there. They're only allowed to use 20% of it. So if you allow them to use 50% of their rear yard area, then they're not trying to squeeze everything in the side yard.
And
And
they
we
don't
think
have to
that
come
will
for a
help the
variance.
whole problem. And that's our
Is
recommendation.
that gonna give people suddenly the ability to add a whole bunch of more structures like pools and tennis courts and things like that that they weren't able to do because of that 20%?
Well, they come and get variances all the time, and so you know something's wrong with the zoning when everybody is asking for 30% or 40% or 50%
There's still
anyway.
a total yard
There's still a total lot coverage
Total lot
required, and so that will still maintain. But why squeeze everything in a side yard when you've got this rear yard and there's an ambiguous number there that someone made up somewhere along the
So
line and
that
said
was
20%?
pushing people to
And now it's
not
pushing
put a
people
shed in
in-
their backyard, but put it next to
Instead
their
in the
neighbor.
side yard, and so we think alleviating that pressure in the rear yard, I mean,
And
it's
this
not really
takes some of
fair,
the
it is your
applications,
property,
and
like,
this takes
why
some of the
can't you use it?
applications.
Like, it's not entirely fair that you can't use your rear yard. I
And this
mean,
frees up some of the ZBA's time as
and it
well.
frees up the ZBA from having to keep issuing variances on something that just,
That they're
right.
issuing
We're
all
not
the time
saying you
anyway.
can back right up to your neighbor or bother anybody.
But
That's
we're not changing your total lot
coverage.
coverage.
We're not changing the total lot coverage.
We're
We're just
just
saying
allowing more of it to go in the backyard rather than the side yard or the
where
front
it's
yard.
technically supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's just an arbitrary restriction that needs a little bit of pressure to be alleviated there, and then the rest of it, I think, will subside. So that's our recommendation. If it,
Is this something the zoning board has asked for?
well, Katie works with the zoning board, and
Okay.
she has watched all these variances, and in talking it through with the building department as well, we think that, instead of everybody trying to push into the side yards, why don't you just let them use their rear yard, which they should have every right to do.
And there's been a conflict in the interpretation of the code over the years, too.
Well, right, and I think that our current chief has the correct interpretation. It is the correct one. Maybe it wasn't followed over the years, but his interpretation is accurate.
Right,
So I'd like to support that and instead look at the real root of the problem and fix that instead.
right. Makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we, since it's sort of related to the agenda, and I want to be able to get the agenda in motion, I'm wondering if we should take the Bel Air discussion first and then the moratorium. I don't think it's going to be more than a couple minutes, but it could affect the resolution. This is the resolution on page 25. So, we all were part of the special meeting the other night, and, the meeting notice was for the two different proposals, the senior housing and the boutique hotel proposal, but, pretty much every speaker spoke on alternatives, particularly the passive park type of idea. And though I still think the urban renewal, the revitalization plan makes sense for the community in terms of keeping the property on the tax rolls and helping the local economy and the stores and restaurants. I don't think I have properly convince the community that that's the right thing for the community. So the idea of now, and we always said we would vet it with the community. We thought the public hearing was a good vetting, but the idea of setting up an advisory committee to sort of look at everything, look at the two proposals, but also other alternatives, either a passive park or maybe a park with some things that could promote tourism in the area, like, games and things, cornhole and shuffleboard and bocce and, maybe mini golf, maybe a food truck. There's all kinds of different possibilities that might actually help the restaurant next door and the market across the way. So, Rick and I tried to come up with stakeholder groups. We're not trying to stack this committee in any way. We're just trying to figure out how do we get a committee that is reflective of the entire community. So the first thought was to have the liaison serve as a non-voting member, an ex officio member. That would be Rick as the chair. And then we'd put the chair of the CAC, or if the chair wanted to designate somebody else. I'm on page 26 right now in the packet. The second person would be the chair of the Civic Association, and then, or their designee. Well, all these are or designee. And then the president of the Beautification Association, the superintendent of the schools, a PTA member, the president or designee, the PTSA, which is a different parent group, the Hampton Bays Chamber of Commerce director, the Hampton Bays Fire Department chief or designee, Hampton Bays Rotary Club president or designee, the Lions Club president or designee. It should say or designee under that one. It doesn't, it just says president. The Hampton Bays American Legion commander or designee, a neighborhood representative selected by the board, town board, Hampton Bays Library Board of Trustees, Hampton Bays Volunteer Ambulance Department, town board president, it should say or designee after that. And Hampton Bays resident at large, appointed by the town board. And we didn't want to make the committee too much bigger than that, and we said that they would meet over the next 3 months, twice a month, and report their recommendation by July 15th of '23. And we asked them to, in here, to consider a number of different aspects, such as economic, community, environmental, neighborhood, school, traffic, and tax impacts. And also the cost of whatever they're proposing. If the town is going to not sell or lease the property, what are the ongoing maintenance costs, whether it's utilities or garbage or lawn mowing? Obviously, if we tear down the building, there's a cost to tearing down the building. If we have to fix the bulkhead, there's a cost to fixing the bulkhead. So, we can look at both ongoing costs as well as ongoing revenue if some of these ideas are revenue generating. Rick, I'll turn it over to you, and then anyone else who wants to weigh in on
Yeah,
this.
so it's a similar process we take, anytime that we, propose a new park, we get the community's input into it. I've reached out to a number of these organizations already. Most want to put 2 people on. I told them they have to pick 1. We've gotten probably this Civic Association president will be joining us. The fire department has committed. The American Legion has committed. The beautification, the Chamber of Commerce has committed. So, we're getting there on designees. But, I think it's a good idea not only to re-explain the 2 proposals that we had brought forward, but also, in all fairness, to change to talk about the changing landscape from when this started in 2018. The capacity is a little different in hotels in Hampton Bays. The need for a recreational component at that location could also be a tourism draw. So there's a lot of things we need to discuss as we go on with this.
All right. Tommy John, any?
I appreciate the approach. I think, to me, this is very similar to a commission, like it's focused on one particular aspect of Hampton Bay. So I appreciate you all working on this and, getting more input from the community. We certainly have heard input from the community, and this will help inform our decision as we move forward with this property.
And with that too, we're operating under an adopted revitalization plan, which conforms to New York State's urban renewal law. So if this committee recommends something other than that plan, we do have to amend the plan. We'll have to amend the plan, we'll have to work with the proposers too. We may have to formally reject those proposals because, they submitted based on the public hearing, the RFP and the public hearing. So, Cindy, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just, I hope it moves along quickly, and, are we limiting it to what we're talking about, or just anything goes kind of deal?
I feel like if this committee wants to hear other ideas, like reducing one of the proposals, like toward the end of the meeting, the boutique hotel proposal said, well, I could cut my proposal in half, and you could have half a park and half economic development. So, and other people have thrown out things from camping to dredge spoil sites.
Miniature golf to just a butterfly garden. It's a park.
Trustee
It's a
offices.
big,
Yeah, and aquaculture, a shellfish hatchery. So, I'm planning on accepting whatever the recommendation is of this committee. I feel like it's reflective of the community, and if they have an idea that's at odds with what I had hoped, whatever the committee comes up with, I plan to support.
Sounded like the trustees were also offering the use of their property next door to combine this. So I think that should be
Yeah.
part of the mix as well.
There's a lot of things that could be in the mix. That's
Yes.
why we need to discuss
Yeah,
all the possibilities.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah, I thought of
one
putting
them-
a trustee rep on, but then knowing that they're actually competing for the property, I thought that might be a conflict.
Mm.
So, but hopefully that they will at least participate and follow the process. And in terms of picking community reps, Rick and I said one neighborhood rep. I'm assuming that's like just somebody who lives on Penny Lane or very close to this property. And then one community at large
I
rep.
know the neighbor did reach out to us, so maybe that's where we should start.
Yeah, I've had a few people in that area who have indicated to me that they would love to serve. Could we add more members? We've tried to stick primarily to heads of organizations, but it is possible that there are other stakeholders that we've left out, so I'm open to adding additional members.
I just would love to see that building gone.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to ask you guys. We could tear the building down, though there's some positives and negatives to it. Now that the health department has waived or signed off on our flow, we no longer need to keep it there for the health department. But if, let's say you were doing an aquaculture facility there, having a cinder block building, and putting, tanks inside for growing oysters and clams and things, that might actually be perfectly suited for that type of purpose. So we might want to wait. The other issue is our cost of tearing it down is double probably what the private sector costs are, for various reasons. So when we were considering the two proposals for economic development, we assumed that that was part of the cost of the developer and the town would not have to pay for it. Though I realize symbolically knocking it down would probably be welcome in the community. So I'm not against knocking it down. I think we should first maybe look to see if it's suitable for an aquaculture facility, but if it's not,
If it's not, then we should at least start the process
should
of getting
get
things in
this-
place, because we
get
know,
this
as we
in place
know,
and-
that doesn't happen very quickly, so
We had
I'd hate
analyzed
to get
it,
to July or August and then decide we're knocking it down and then have it be up until, the coming year again.
we'd have to talk to Tom Houghton
Okay.
on it. Would the board like to spend the money knocking it down?
I'd like to at least explore it.
Yeah, I would too, please.
Okay, let's get a number.
Okay.
Let's find out what it's gonna cost.
At the same time, I want to task whoever is responsibility to see the differences between the town owning it, gifting it to CPF, swapping it out for another piece. What are the advantages of it being a CPF property versus a town-owned property? I want to make that clear to the public too.
And as we move forward and we weigh other ideas, one thing that has to happen is Penny Pond has to get dredged. That has to happen. So I think another aspect of, as we explore moving the building, we also need to get those dredge spoils tested, just to know what we're even dealing with when it comes to, is it something that we can, just dewater and remove from the property, or is it something that's gonna need, carting off-site? So I'd like to at least get it
Yeah,
tested.
we don't know where those dredge spoils are gonna go.
No, but I would like to get it tested, because
And
then
where they're
that
getting dewatered.
that basically will tell us what we can and can't do.
Right, that's trustees should do that. And, some of the people were saying, this should absorb tidal surges and things like that, that we should get rid of the bulkhead. I mean, the committee can look at.
I don't think you can get rid of the bulkhead there, because you destroy that waterfront business across the way.
I think you do. That's what I was gonna say. I know the trustees were recommending a low silt bulkhead, but you have the potential of sedimentation in that end of the creek that could make it unnavigable. And, you could potentially be putting that little marina across the
business.
way out of business.
Can I ask what the trustees were recommending? Frankly, I heard a number of different
They
things
wanted to
from the
build
trustees.
offices.
They wanted
and-
trustee
Right, there was
offices.
they were interested in the property,
And
but they
boat
also said
storage.
that they would participate in some public access. So I don't get
heard
the sense
offices, a
that,
shop, boat storage, so basically like a,
Kayaks.
facility.
and open to the public in conjunction with their property. Okay,
And possibly purchasing it over time from the town. So that wasn't really clear.
but I mean, that's taxpayer money, so
It
it's.
is. But right now it's general fund, then it would go on the trustee line,
But it's still taxpayer money. For, it's taxpayers paying for a property they already purchased. I mean, it's what it is.
well, it would be,
Well, for the improvements anyway.
Well, no,
Yeah.
because if we did the economic development plans, not only would be fully reimbursed, we'd have an extra $300,000 for blight mitigation, which is something, we can dismiss and say it's not needed. Or, I think let the committee look at that. I think that goes into the plus column in terms of those two proposals.
in other words, that goes away if we
Yeah,
make it park, right?
The general fund gets $1.2 million, and the blight mitigation fund gets $300,000.
Right.
And we have no ongoing costs. And I have to go back to Lisa, because Lisa Gorey, on the tax implications. I want to make sure that she has analyzed on the hotel one correctly what the tax was. On the senior one, I might have misread and said the senior one was like 48,000 or 45,000, but the hotel one, initially, she had said over 100,000, and then I thought she had corrected it to a lower number. I just want to clarify that, because that's what the school will get each year.
And that's a question that the committee should discuss, the tax implications. We heard from our residents that they didn't mind the extra taxes in Hampton Bays, which is a different tune than what we were hearing from years ago, and
That was a priority, to lower property taxes in Hampton
I'm happy to
Bays.
hear that in a way.
If
that
it's no longer a
they're not-
priority, that's
Yeah.
great.
That's
I
good
just
news.
would like to explore removing that property and also test those dredge spoils, so or at least while we're having these meetings, we're moving towards something.
Well, that's on our end, but I really think that's the trustees would, right? Do the sediment, they're involved with the dredging.
Well, we can have them test it.
That's bottom line.
Yeah, do you want to, you're the liaison?
I'll reach out, yeah, I'll reach out.
I actually sent them that request a few weeks ago when we had a report that there was some grant money for that, and they were going to take a look at it at that point.
And we do have to think about when it eventually is dredged, where is the dewatering going to occur? We may not have a spot.
There currently isn't, but if you are removing that building and you're removing, you know, all the asphalt and stuff, you could potentially, some of it could stay on site to, you know, fix the grade.
Right.
I know we did that in East Quogue at Bay Avenue.
Yeah, one of the developers actually mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's worth looking at.
But we've been getting that request for 4 years.
It has to
dredge that,
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no plan.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and
I'll reach out to the
I
trustees.
know from
and ask.
another one of these that, you know, citing a dredge spoil site is not so easy because of concerns about smells associated with the drying sediments. And, you know, putting it right next to a restaurant may not be perfect. I don't know. So, you know, it's something to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the restaurant, I'm sure, would agree that it needs to get dredged. So that may be the only
And they don't want
opportunity
us to
site.
use their parking lot, obviously, so.
Yeah. Well, maybe it could be done at a time of year
It's
that
space.
it's not harmful. All right. All right, so we're gonna, other than the two changes in terms of designees, that's the only, Sunday, did you get that?
I did.
You know, on Hampton Bays Lions Club President or designee, and Hampton Bays Volunteer Ambulance Board President or designee. Okay, thank you for that.
And if I could just mention something in regards to the Windsor project,
The which project?
the resolution about the Windsor project
Yes.
for outside. New York State has adopted legislation that they pushed out to all of the town clerks to execute, and that is a one-day marriage officiant license. So now people can come in once it runs with the municipality that issues the license. So if someone is issued a license, no matter where they go to get married, because licenses are good throughout New York State, no matter which town clerk's office you acquire them from. But if you get a license in a specific municipality and somebody wants to come in and get a one-day marriage officiant license, they need to get it from the same municipality where the license was issued. They're $25, and they come in. If the couple has already gotten their license here, they fill out the form with all the information. They show us ID, and they give us their application, and we're going to give them a license specific to a day and a location that anyone can now perform marriage ceremonies with the permission of the couple, obviously. So, they're allowing us to keep the entire amount of the money because this was not something that the New York State Town Clerks Association was involved in any discussions on. The governor decided they adopted the legislation and that they didn't have the wherewithal to execute this on a state level, so they pushed it out to the local municipalities without any discussion. So now you don't necessarily need to appoint people here and there for specific dates. They can come in and get a license on their own. And I just wanted you to be made aware of that because we're just about to push this out onto the website. We're working with IT and with CRC shortly to make everyone aware of this. So I didn't want you to get caught off guard.
So you don't have to be in the clergy of any kind, you don't have to live in the town, they just come
Well,
in.
the clergy are entitled to.
They're entitled to do it.
you know,
I'm just
they're
saying that,
exempt
so
from
if
this.
somebody wants, if a couple wants to get married, they can pick anyone they want to marry them, whether they live in the town or not, whether they're a
Correct.
priest or rabbi or whatever,
State resident? Any citizen?
anybody.
Okay.
There's not a lot of parameters other than what's required, the information that's required on the application, and the majority of that information comes from the marriage license. It's about the officiant, not the officiant, it's about the couple getting married, their information, location of where the ceremony is going to take place. It doesn't even have to take place necessarily in the town of Southampton. It's all related to the issuance of the marriage license. Because, as I said earlier, licenses, people acquire licenses all the time from other municipalities and then come here to get married because the license is good throughout New York State.
They're essentially a witness.
Well, no, they're not a witness,
you have
because
to have
they
a
still
witness
need
too,
two
right?
witnesses,
Right.
or one witness legally, to sign, and I, put some of that information out as well, that they
So
are
if
not.
they get the marriage officiant certificate from you, they can actually perform the wedding outside of the town of Southampton, as long as it's in New
That's
York
my
State.
understanding, as long as because the reason why it has to be issued by the municipality that issues the marriage license is that the license is filed for, all time with the issuing agency. So if you get your marriage license here in the town of Southampton and you go and get married in Brookhaven, say, the license isn't filed in Brookhaven, it's filed where you
Okay, well,
apply for it.
That's new.
So, yes, so keeping the officiant information intact with the license where it's filed, I think is the intent. So, at that point, they can go wherever they choose in New York State.
Now, are there rules in terms of, like, does the officiant have to ask certain questions? Like, are there laws that say you must, obviously you have to have witnesses, but you have to say the things like, is there anyone who objects to this,
Well, I don't
Marriage.
think there's the marriage
is there a,
police in regards to what's actually said, but at some point, I believe they are required to ask, if they take each other to be
Right.
their spouses.
that question you have to ask?
Yes, that's an
The I do
essential
question.
part. People don't usually bring people to ceremonies that are going to object, so I think that's more of a formality, and you watch on TV. But there's no parameters for that part of it. There are requirements that we require as the issuing agent of the license. I give instructions on how to fill it out properly, as I've provided to you when you
Yes.
first got started. So, they have to be filled out completely filled out with where they are located. That's why us gathering some of the information in advance as to where they're going to be is helpful in providing them the information. They need to accurately fill it out. It's new, and people are starting to call. So your offices, I had the senator's office call because a constituent called their office in order to try and find out information, because this came down from New York State, so they're not quite sure where to look for the information. So I've actually had probably a half a dozen inquiries this week so far. So
Okay.
this could be my new revenue stream. It's coming.
That's good.
But just
Now, and
wanted
also,
you to
like,
be-
once we have the marriage platform, can
We'd
we,
love to have a gazebo as well for sun and.
we
shade.
can talk about that, and that could keep some of the cherry blossoms from falling on the beautiful
Well,
pavers, but.
when it's really sunny out, and also when it's drizzling a little bit, we could still go outside and use.
Right, that would be nice. Are we permitted to charge anything for using the,
Once there
platform?
is a specified location, I believe it's then called a facility use. I've researched this over the years quite often, but since I was performing the majority of them on the lawn or in my office, that didn't qualify. Because, we're a destination location for many people that come from other areas, not within our municipality, to get married here. So for me to, schedule those types of appointments frequently takes away from my duties here, so. We did look into it. Several municipalities do have specific locations
okay, yeah, we should look into
designated for
that.
marriages, and this clearly would be that, I think, it fall into that category, but I can.
And then we have, there's roughly 200 hearts as part of this platform that can be engraved. I think we're starting out with 40 or so, or 50. But I imagine that people who get married there, people might want to give them a present by getting a heart engraved to commemorate that day. So I think that that may be additional revenue, though.
That's
That
a big
revenue will go, once the heart is fully paid for, it goes to, we agreed that would go to the health clinic. So, but it has the potential to raise a couple $100,000 for that health clinic, which would be nice. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move on in the agenda to battery energy storage. There's a request for a moratorium, and we have Jenna Shearer, our Town Planning and Development Administrator, and Deputy Town Attorney Christine Scalera is here, and Deputy Supervisor Frank Sapone is here. Frank, did you want to participate in this?
I'm here to listen.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Janice, you want to introduce this?
Sure. So, as you know, in 2021, the board adopted the battery energy storage regulations. And we had a couple of applications come through the planning board. The planning board felt somewhat uncomfortable with, we had NYSERDA come and do some training, and we had some more trying to get them on board technically about, and there's just a level of uncomfort there because more and more I think communities are worrying about batteries. I think that we need to first and foremost confirm the fact that they're a definite option. There's no way around it if you want to have renewable energy, right? We know the sun doesn't always shine, the wind isn't always blowing. You need some way to store energy. And so we all can still agree that that is primarily the goal, is
And
to be
also to-
able to have battery
not
energy
have to
storage.
Produce more energy from non-renewable resources to meet peak demand.
That's right.
Right? So
And
so you
also
don't
it
have more diesel
optimizes-
fuel and more wires and all that stuff because they can buy the power at night and release it during the day and offset the need for more power generation in general.
That's right. And, they're, around the world, they're the most, realistic and effective choice to optimize energy management. Sometimes they produce too much energy because it's super sunny and you would waste it if you didn't store it, right? So we know that we need batteries. We know we need energy storage systems. There's tons of different types of energy storage systems, by the way. Batteries are only one type. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But batteries are one type of way. And so the concern is, well, where are these going to go exactly? And the planning board wanted us to literally be like, you get battery storage here, here, and here. And we hesitate to do that, as you know. We like a level playing field, and we can't just dictate what everybody does because there's market demands, you have a litany of uses that you can choose from in your world of property rights. And so this was another land use type that you can choose from. I think that the concerns of the community are understandable because it's new, and anything new, has a
I know you've
fear
been part of
factor
those
to it.
processes. The concern primarily public health and safety from fires and explosions and that kind of thing?
Absolutely, and that, and Christine can talk about it some more, but I think that it has to, mostly to do with, people being concerned about, you hear things in the news, like this car went on fire and it had a battery and they couldn't put it out with regular water and it burned for hours and hours, or we don't want to put PFAS on this stuff, we already know what that does. So how does this work? How do we contain a fire, or how do we make sure that, some component of the actual battery isn't leaching into the groundwater? And those are all legitimate things to be concerned about.
So I wish John was here because John and I have had conversations about this, and there's different types of batteries.
That's right.
And so that needs to be taken into consideration. I asked to have this conversation because there are a lot of community concerns, and then watching the planning board meetings and just seeing their discomfort with how to ask questions and what questions to ask, because this isn't necessarily a planning issue where you're dealing with a site plan. There's very technical aspects of this, and they feel pretty ill-equipped. They can lean on planning staff, but they want to feel comfortable with their decisions on their own without having to defer everything, because at that time, you may as well just have planning staff say, this is where it's going and this is what you need to do. They have to make that decision, and I want them to feel comfortable making that decision. And another part, when you're talking about environmental issues, right now, the only real way that we have to fight these fires is with putting tons of water on it. And you have to ask, okay, well, after the fire happens, where does all that water go and what's in it? And
Right, well, I mean, you know, not,
there are environmental
there,
issues.
well, yes and no. I mean, the part of the law right now requires a whole safety plan, and it does say procedures for safe shutdown. So say they're not like out in the open, right? You're in a concrete building, like these batteries. They're in a building. And you have to have a procedure for safe shutdown, turning the energy off. It says procedures for safe shutdown, de-energizing, isolation of equipment systems under emergency conditions to reduce the risk of fire, electric shock, personal injuries, and then for safe startup. Now, what does that mean specifically? You would like to have that more clearly defined, and we understand why you want to say, let's just pause for a minute and fix these things, and we have no issue with doing any
Yeah,
of
like
that.
I think Ryan
Right, and
Murphy
that's-
needs to be part of the conversation, our fire marshal.
If I could just, from the planning board's perspective, because I sit with them now, and this has been something like, I think they want you to understand that they're all in support and understand the need for these systems as we go forward. I don't think it was so much that they were looking for one here, here, and here. I think they felt as though they wanted a more cohesive or holistic plan, because while it is supposed to be taking care of some of the peak times, it's not just our peak, and it's for the entire East End. And we seem to be absorbing these, while other municipalities around us may or may not. And it
Doesn't
seems
East
that there
Hampton
should
already
be.
has one, right?
Yeah, but they're not citing over there. They haven't used it as far as I understand yet.
Oh, I thought
So
it was up
there
Well,
to
we're
should be
us.
not
some-
absorbing any from
Can I
anyone
just-
else.
Can I just finish?
Sure, but
They
I
just-
just want to correct that.
They just want, well, we don't know what we're absorbing. The point is they wanted to have these discussions so that they had a better understanding of what was expected of them. And then their discomfort lied in the fact that they don't know what a safe plan looks like. They were told in one instance of, that they couldn't do underground because of X, Y, and Z. And they were all accepting of that. Then when there was some pushback on going underground, next thing we know, they can go underground. They don't know what the questions are that they should be asking to get the information they need to make informed, educated decisions. That's just how they feel. And it's less of a criticism or anything like that with this. They just want to understand it, and they want to represent all of you well in making sure they're addressing community concerns. We've heard recently about these fires, the safety issues. They don't know. They don't know what a safety plan looks like. They don't know what a decommissioning plan looks like. They're
So
supposed to
the
evaluate
planning
these
board
things.
is asking for more detail in the underlying
They're
legislation?
at, not so, well,
I'm
maybe,
a little bit
maybe
confused.
that's part of it.
Because that's, yeah,
That may be part of it, but I think more so, they'd like to put a pause just so that they can get up to speed and maybe take some more targeted classes so that they can understand exactly what they should be looking for in terms of weighing whether or not something needs to be underground, weighing whether or not they need a 12-foot wall retaining, thing around the perimeter of the property to keep the sound down. Is that reasonable or is that not reasonable? Does it need to, they just don't know what they don't know is more or less the issue. And they just want to pause
I
so they
need a
can get up to speed.
clarification. When you say go underground, you mean an installation of a battery facility below grade?
No,
There were wires that
utility
connected up.
connections.
The utility?
Yeah, utility wires.
Oh.
I think as part of
I
this,
misunderstood that, too.
what is missing is sort of more clarity on perhaps like some of these are potentially too far from an existing substation, and what we didn't consider was more regulatory control over new substations. So with that, we can look at that, because, for example, someone may say, and this happened by my house with a solar farm, they didn't anticipate that they're too far away, and they built a whole new substation, literally, in addition to a solar farm. So we don't have and Mike and I looked into it, like some municipalities do have rules and regulations regarding new substations.
And-
So it could be, surrounding that, we could look at those issues. Just in terms of newer, we'll get the planning board, and we've already, committed some budget toward training.
Training,
So I think that
Now, how
we can
many-
handle that.
How many battery storage facilities have come in under the code that we enacted?
2. One has been approved,
There's
and
two.
one is
One is
being
already
weighed.
approved.
One is
I
already
don't know that
approved
it's
in an
already
area.
approved. It had a neg deck, but I don't know that
I went
it's-
downstairs this morning, Jeff told me it was approved. I know that we did the neg deck, the last time it was on, he said we did a neg deck and we approved it, but we'll check on that.
Yeah.
But in any event, that
The other
was
one was a
that
pre-app, so it wasn't a.
The one I know is very close to a substation, right?
Right, and there was one by the highway, like, there was nobody came out against that, it seemed to have, it was far enough away from everything, there was,
It's in the
You know.
cloverleaf, I think, of the, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's,
That's
I mean, there's a
Sunrise
section
Highway.
in here too, like
Exactly.
with needing a 50-foot setback from a residential property, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with that 50-foot distance.
the NYSERDA model was what was used, and so obviously they came out with all these guidelines, and at the time, everybody was going on with that, but as you see now where they can go, and perhaps with the size differentials, it jumps from under 600 to over 600, and we like switch, areas or zones where it's allowed. Like that maybe needs to be, as we're now processing these, we see maybe we need to look at that a little bit more closely and figure out where it may be more appropriate for us here, and maybe make those distinctions.
When you talk about moratoria, whatever you want, I just get concerned that, we've invited people based on our code to make application. and They probably have expended a lot of time and money trying to come up with a proposal that met our code. And it's one thing to say, okay, we want to take a pause, we've got these two, they're under review, but if a third one comes in, we want them to come in under a different set of code language.
I think
Is
the
that what you're
second
asking
one,
for?
no, the first one is all set and it meets the parameters and, I think we're good, that one. Even if we changed the code entirely, we would still permit that one. You know what I mean? So you're not losing
Yeah,
anything from
but
that
you-
one.
so the second one is the
The
one that we're
second one was a
getting all the
pre-app,
grief
and
about.
and
Yeah.
what you wanna do, if you're gonna do a pause, it's now before they're in the queue, and you have to exempt them, right? So you would wanna do it,
Well, where do you
not
put-
necessarily exempt
I've been involved
anybody.
with a lot of these, sometimes you say anything that gets submitted after this date is subject to the moratorium, or you can set the moratorium on a particular place in the process, which is what you're suggesting.
I'm
But so you're
suggesting anyone-
suggesting a moratorium that would capture one of them but not the other.
Correct.
And I'm saying, well, what about not capturing either?
Well, the other one is not a real application yet. We have a pre-application process.
There's no rights
where
there.
There's no rights there. So we
Okay.
issue a report, and we tell you all the things that you need to do. You need a variance, you have to go, whatever. And that's the only stage they got to, was a litany of issues in a report. And they did not make a formal application. Once someone makes a formal application, now you would likely exempt them from the moratorium. Usually, people who are in the pipeline, we typically,
Wouldn't it would take us probably 2 months just to put the moratorium in place.
well, you
right?
must have a county
hearing.
referral. It would not be proper unless you did. Right? So we have to have, a draft local law, refer it
How
to
long of a
Suffolk County
moratorium
plan.
are you seeking?
I'm not seeking, you
I would
tell
think
me
3 to
what.
6 months would be,
3 to 6 months?
would be what would be recommended. Listen, you have a law in the books. It's not like you didn't all think this through at the time. It's just that as you've now processed, you see the realities of what some of these issues could be. So I would not recommend going on something entirely long. I would
keep
think
it short, 2
Yeah.
to
3 to
3
6
months.
months
I mean, you
is
can always
usually
extend it.
Well,
I think it's gonna
just
take
to
you
get
2 months
training.
to do it.
Yeah,
So-
I think you can need 6 months.
So I'm
just,
clear,
as an
what are
outside
the
vote.
issues? There's safety issues, because
There's
as far as
safety
fire
issues.
suppression and making people aware of this, this was a discussion when we did enact these laws.
Right.
As far as residential, there's going to be medallions on the electric meters. There's also a mapping system, so firefighters know if
Yep.
a particular resident has this. But you're more concerned about the larger facilities.
We're concerned with everything, I think, I'm speaking on behalf of, what I've heard from the planning board right now, and you all are welcome to watch their hearings, because at every one of the discussions that we've had with the people who have come in for these things, these issues have been raised, and the board has said repetitively, we're not comfortable with this, why this? So The issues would be
Thank
not
you.
just the safety stuff and understanding that better,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Accept-
potential alternatives to some of perhaps the safety concerns and the alternatives in mitigation, like what they can do to mitigate some of those concerns. In terms of placement, it's a jump from under 85 to 600, and then over 600, it is commercial. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more of a distinction in, particularly if you're talking about residential, between 85 and 600. Those are vastly different provisions for, and that could really impact a residential neighborhood if that's where you're saying you're allowing them, and right now they're allowed there. So they want to look exactly at some of those
Yeah, we
things.
did
Sure, but
allow
I
them
would
in
also just
residential areas.
clarify, we're not talking about battery storage and we have opportunity areas and avoidance areas, and we made it very clear where we didn't want them, where they were to be avoided. And that was, we didn't exempt residentially zoned properties because some lands, let's say the West Hampton area, they're residentially zoned, they're like old sand mines. So why would you, until we can act like maybe an opportunity zone, and they can do
I
it
remember I was
separately.
here when we did this code, and we thought battery storage was a relatively benign use, that it was
Right.
quiet, and apparently maybe it's not so quiet.
Well,
But-
so the question is, we can we're happy to take another look at it.
We also had Ryan Murphy asked if he could weigh in on this, as we go forward, because if all the fire marshals just went to a full-day symposium with the FDNY on battery energy storage systems and fire suppression and all that, and they have concerns. So,
As do our local fire department.
yeah.
Right.
So all
We've
the
asked for
comments
many of
that the
them.
planning board has made is reflected in what the community is thinking at the same time. The noise, where it is in residential areas, the fire suppression certainly, and, that's all big part of their concerns.
And like I said, the work session came up fast. I asked if the planning board chair could be here. I didn't hear back from her, but it was a short notice. So please be open if any of those planning board members reach out to you, and you can hear from them as well.
Well, you'll get a referral on the code.
Can I just,
Right, but I want, before they even go down this avenue, I want to make sure they hear from
because it's
them.
utility infrastructure for providing electricity to homes, I mean, you have to have some proximity to where the energy is going, just like any substation
That
or
was our
power
thinking
station.
too. I mean,
You
people
can't
are
just put it
afraid
in the
that
middle
this
of
is gonna
nowhere
like,
and then expect,
impact them.
whether it was a water district infrastructure or communications, whatever it is, somehow you need to get it to the people. So it's sort of logical. And I think with some of the electrical, Jim, I don't know to the degree, like if PSE&G or LIPA are proposing a substation, how subject to are they fully subject to local
They are
zoning?
not subject to anything, and
That is
they'll
not
be
true.
putting in
That is not
batteries
true.
on
From a leg-
LIPA-owned properties. They
From
are
a legal
not.
perspective, they do not have absolute immunity.
Well, they have certainly have the file seeker, and then.
They have to follow
Right, but
secret,
they
but so
enjoy
far we've
some
seen
exemptions,
this.
I believe.
Some
Yeah,
immunity,
they
but
may
not
have
fully.
some.
It's not an absolute immunity.
Right, and we don't
It
really want
depends
to
on
get
what
in the
their
situation where the state is going,
Applications for.
battery energy storage is a utility and not subject to local zoning. So we don't want that either.
Yeah.
That,
Well, we're not there,
So-
and all we're talking about maybe a 3 to 6 month pause to get, if we can get the planning board comfortable with this and comfortable with the zoning, I think we stand a good chance to get the community comfortable with it as well.
It's really being comfortable with the siting. It's not the zoning. The planning board supports this. They want to be able to do this. They understand that it should happen, and they want to facilitate good projects that should be and will help the communities that you all
is-
serve.
I know, the one that is less evolved in the process, is it in a residential area?
No.
It's in that, you said.
No, the one that's not.
The other one.
The
It's
second
in
the other
highway
one.
business.
It's in highway business,
It's
but
in a commercial area.
there are residences around there. That's not really, that was just a siting issue. But with regard to that one, I think that came up because of the 12-foot wall that they said that they needed, I guess, to mitigate the noise that was going to surround the property. And then questions became like, well, what kind of noise is being emitted, and do they really need that wall? And does it have to be
12-foot wall.
12
Can
feet
you
high?
build
And doesn't it need to
in a
be?
highway business, can't you build like a 30-foot building? Right?
Yes.
So a
The
12-foot wall
thing
could
is
look like
this,
the
the planning
wall of a
board,
one-story building.
well, when you're talking about fences and walls, you're in a different territory than buildings.
Is
So,
it on the
but-
property
but
line, or is
Instead
it
of going
set
into the
in?
merits of that specific
Initially,
thing,
it was up
I
by there, then they moved it back.
Moved it back.
it would be
All right, I
better
don't know
to
the
just
details of the
discuss the fact
application.
that the
Same.
planning board needs to know that they have the ability to say, well, if you're having a noise impact, at what level do you not have a noise impact? And pare it down to that
Right,
level,
right.
instead of them being like, and this is just like any other board, somebody asks for this, and somehow it gets pared down to what, and it's an iterative process.
They're just asking
but
for
they
a
don't-
pause so that
I-
they can get
The
better
planning
training.
board, is the planning board's asking for this pause?
Yes.
Yeah, they've been, and you can go, listen to their meetings, and
And I've
they've asked
spoken
us, and
to
they've
several of
spoken.
them.
And Janice and Jackie and
Oh,
I've
myself
watched
had a
their meetings. They
conversation.
were kind of
2
blindsided by
weeks.
this whole idea when they first got it, because nobody really knew anything about it. So they're trying to get up to speed as fast as
Like I said, it's very
everybody.
technical for them. It's
Yeah.
not like citing a building or landscaping.
Sure.
It's very
Of course,
technical.
we would also just note that the planning board, and I'm all for doing a moratorium too, if that's what the board and you feel comfortable and that's what you want, but always and every time, if the planning board needs technical assistance, they can refer it to a technical expert. We have a chargeback provision in our code, so they don't have to become
Or they concerned,
chemical
though, that-
engineers or battery science people, they don't have to be that.
They just don't know what
But they
questions
have a
to ask.
statutory timeframe to make a decision once there's a complete application, correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
So that's probably what their concern is, that they'll get a complete application and be forced to issue a determination within 60 days or whatever that statutory timeframe
It's
is.
within 62 days of a public
Hearing,
hearing, but
closing
that,
of
we
the
do
hearing.
this all day long when it comes to traffic studies and everything else and send those things out. So it's identifying who is the technical expert that can assist them in making these determinations. That's part of this whole thing. So they feel like, well, this is beyond my understanding, but who can I give this to give me a report back that I can, now apply that? So, there's some pieces there that I think we can put into play that will help them, and the training and everything else. But planning boards are typically lay people. We don't expect them to be
Right.
the biggest technical experts.
Sure. They shouldn't be.
They should not be.
And
So that's
they're
why we
asking-
have
they're
professional
asking
planners
for-
and why we have technical experts that we refer things
They were
to.
asking, they call it a pause. I mean,
So
that
if
they're
you get,
saying
let's say we agree
they
to
want a
do,
timeout.
let's say after public hearing, we agree to do a 3-month timeout, a pause moratorium. What do we hope to get done in that 3 months?
They really want education and training.
Well, they want education and training,
You're
but the
good, but you're talking
point
about
would be
amending
in
the
the
code.
legislation.
We don't, if we're doing a moratorium, it's to amend the code.
Yes, and
Not,
I'm
we could get them
trying,
the training and education now, as you were saying. I'm sorry, Jen.
no, it's okay, I'm trying to say we can go back and look at, our avoidance areas and like Christine was saying, the
Safety
megawatt,
plans.
the kilowatts, the range.
The safety
and
plan.
Ryan
And,
Murphy would like to look at the
um,
safety plan.
This, well, it requires him to in the code every time,
Requires
the
a
emergency
decommissioning
operation plan that has to be, includes the following information and whatever. So we can have Ryan Murphy and John Rankin or whoever else look at these procedures. We did do that, by the way, but
I think now they have new
now have new
information.
information, so
Maybe
they
we ask them
can,
for a report
maybe they.
as part of the process, like ask them for their report as part of the record.
We do, we
No, I
would
know
do
you get
that.
referrals,
We
but I'm
always
just saying,
refer
but
it.
maybe they're planning.
But
like,
in the
planning board
code itself,
approves
right now, we can add a
report.
procedure, I don't know. We would have to just figure out what here is
It's about tweaking,
missing.
it's not about doing
Are
anything
there any other
monumental.
approvals needed by the one plan that's not the one in the Cloverleaf, the other one? Do they need variances and
Yes.
things like that based
Yeah.
on the plan? That typically happen before they go for site plan?
Yes, so you come in for what is known as a pre-submission, a site plan for a commercial, application. You come for what's known as a pre-submission, so we can outline all the issues. So that nobody, and it's like a, community often says, we never heard about it, but literally you have like a 3-time chance to come in because we have this pre-submission. So the pre-submission is that we have a hearing, we understand up front what people's problem, issues, or concerns are, or they love it, rare, but does happen sometimes. And we write a report, and we tell you, you've got 12-foot walls, we don't, this doesn't meet code 330-109, you need a variance.
Right.
This has blah, 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 you need to, you're not maintaining your clearing, whatever it is, we write a report. And we tell you what to
And
go
you've done
away
that.
and go do. Yes, that report has been adopted. What that particular one was trying to do was make amendments and get changes to their adopted report. We don't typically do that. You have to resubmit and we'll do a new report. We're not like 10 bites at the apple here. That's
see.
what a formal site plan is all about, not a pre-submission.
So that
What you give
report-
us in that pre-submission, the report reflects.
Did they then go to the zoning board after
No.
that report? They haven't made an application
They're
to the zoning
trying
board.
to sort
Change
of
it.
make changes now and get a better report.
So that
It's a
it might-
pre-submit.
So if they shrink certain things, they might not need variances.
Right, but they don't even need a new report. You could just come in the final, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go back for a second
Okay.
pre-submission report if you've amended it. You would just make an application, a formal application. They have not done that yet. They went away with their pre-submission report with a to-do list,
All right, I'm just trying to
including
create sort of a
variances.
distinction, because yes, we can get the planning board training. That's very different, though, than amending the code. So it sounds like you are looking to amend the code to,
Well, we would like to amend the code to understand some more of these avoidance areas. If people have specific issues in terms of transition yards to
Like
residential.
the 50 feet.
The kilowatt hour size distinctions, and just tighten all that up. I would recommend, and then the emergency procedures.
so
Yeah,
what would
so
the
if I could-
moratorium, would it prevent that one applicant, prevent the planning department from
It's not meant to
processing?
prevent that one applicant, though. That one applicant raised a host of issues that in processing, they realized that they'd be dealing with, so it was. it's
Any
significant
applicant
to
So
them,
would
you
but
would,
I think any
you would
applicant.
stop processing their
Any applicant.
application?
We have stopped
But
processing them. They're
it's
done. They are, a pre-submission happened.
They got
We
their list
issued
of
their
these
report.
issues, go
They have
do.
not submitted a formal application yet.
Is there anything that stops us from amending the code right now? And
No.
wouldn't, if we did, it would
You
affect
just have to
them.
know what you want to do.
Well, then you're not having, typically it protects the property owner as well, because what rules are they operating under? It's not fair to change the rules in the middle of the game. That's
Yeah, I'm just
typically
wondering whether
why the
actually-
moratorium makes
But the
sense.
moratorium will change the rules in the middle of the game for them,
But it
too.
stops the rules, it stops everything, there's no path anymore. You shut the door for a minute and said, let's get this in
And
order,
there-
and then you reopen it again, and then people
But
can
if we
apply.
didn't do a moratorium and we just enacted changes to the code,
They can
they
still
would be
apply.
subject to those new changes.
It's the rule of the day, and it
Right.
has to do with
That's
whether
right.
or
But
not
I
you have a
also
shovel
want to, I
in the
just want
ground.
to say, they may, after all of this is done, you may well decide you don't want to change anything. Like, this is
Okay.
getting the planning board educated and trained and looking at this a little more closely to see if whether or not there needs to now in practicality, now that we see how it looks and feels when we're doing it, if we need to make any changes. If not, then you don't. But the planning board still needs to be educated, which was their primary.
We should be getting them educated, as you're saying.
100%.
Because we're gonna
We
have a
did try to
hearing.
educate
Right, but it's
we're
hard to
gonna-
educate
we're gonna
while
have to
they're going.
This is gonna be referred to the Suffolk County Planning Commission. You know,
To
there
quote
might,
George
there might be
Lynch,
compelling
it's like fixing
reasons
a
to
car while
not
you're
enact
driving
a moratorium. We don't know, so I think that we should be using this moment to make sure that they get the training, which you said you're already doing.
We're already
so-
doing, we're already putting budget
So-
toward it and getting that organized so that they can attend.
And the fire marshals just
So
went to
Cindy,
something
what
recently.
you want to introduce a resolution to notice a public hearing on a moratorium?
Yes.
So,
Go ahead.
we haven't heard from the planning board. And
Well,
as a
you
board
are
member,
now
I
by
guess,
proxy.
That's why I'm
I
kind of doing
haven't
it by
heard about
proxy.
this at all, and I'm the liaison to the firefighters. I mean, this hasn't come up in Southampton Town. I'm not saying it's not an issue, but, and from what I'm gleaning here, that the issues that the planning board heard was about noise, about setbacks, about sighting, and safety. Is that accurate? Is that?
That's
But
accurate.
those are, and as far as sighting in different areas, so we want to presumably look at the code to make changes in the code to address some of those.
If needed.
If needed.
Their primary thing that was driving them to
Uh-huh.
request this is they felt discomfort with what they were being asked to do based on what they're seeing as these progress, as issues that are coming up that they were not prepared for. And they asked to take a pause. And that's why this came up fast, So that's why I was asking you, and it would be great if you even wanted to reach out
Well,
to
I'm
them,
going
but
to
you
watch
can
one of
see
the
it on
planning
their
board
public,
meetings
yeah,
where
you can
this,
see those
you know, so
too.
you're discussing something
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm,
But, you know,
not
maybe,
necessarily
you
aware
know,
of,
so
but-
our threshold was 600 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
So below it is P, above it is special exception. There, what Christine was suggesting is maybe there's a different number on that spectrum that, you know, P means you're permitted. Maybe that's not the right number. So based on all the fire safety knowledge, all of the, you know, at what level, at what kilowatt hours is there
So-
any noise?
Which is
you
all
know,
So
is it-
I'm
batteries
asking,
are
so I'm
evolving.
asking, I'm basically asking for a pause so that we can get the planning board comfortable, our emergency response comfortable, and maybe we do make some tweaks and maybe we don't.
I was
but-
unaware that they were uncomfortable with this, and that's something that I'm just hearing now, that they're, for whatever
they just-
reason.
our fire
I mean,
marshals-
I've read some of the news reports too, and the bicycle batteries, you know, causing fires in New
right,
York.
right.
There was a fire up on the North Fork with that particular car, you know, but one of these facilities, you know, there's fire suppression that's built in to it. This wasn't, you know, we were mindful of that, but I guess things are changing, and now that
And
it's
evolving,
coming
like when
into.
you guys were doing this, or initially looked at it, I think batteries were also in a different, like there are different battery options now too, as well, as that
And
have been
that's-
come up over the last.
And that's why I wish
recent-
John was here, because we were talking about this. There are different types of batteries that are not lithium-based that we could potentially require that they use, that there, doesn't have these fire issues.
And it doesn't burn as hot, so, but we don't know that, like, these are just things, we're not experts, we don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know what I don't know.
We don't know if those are
We know enough to know
viable
we
systems.
don't
We don't
know.
know the cost
On
of those
the,
systems, whether it
we
makes
don't
any
know.
sense.
On the
Yeah,
more-
we passed all this legislation based on New York State
It was the best
recommendations.
at the time.
And we need to
You
be
had the best
updated on it.
information at
So
the time.
Ryan has to get involved, fire marshals. I'd also like to hear from a local fire department, because it's well and good if we say, yeah, the state says we can take care of fire compression. Ryan says it, and then you go to the local fire department and they're not trained for it. So I'd really like to, if we could even have a work session just on that.
Yeah, but we just need to make fact-based
Yeah,
decisions.
exactly.
Yes.
And
So
you
you
have-
need to be
everybody.
aware too, like every.
Nobody's
power-
saying don't do this. We're all
Every
just
power
saying,
station, you know, you have transformers all over the place. Those transformers have PCBs in them. Those fires lead to dioxin. I mean, there are hazards related to our utility infrastructure as it is. And I'm not saying that that means we should go ahead and build battery energy storage, but we do want to try to meet our goal of moving away from renewables. And
And they
I
support
think
that
these things are part of
wholeheartedly.
our future, as the way electric cars are part of our future. But they're not perfect technologies. I don't think we should ignore the community concerns. I think we need to make sure we address them and we do our homework and we get fact-based answers and we involve our fire department and ambulance and make sure that we know that the sightings are proper and, you know, it has proper access and equipment. So I'm not opposed to a short moratorium.
Short, very short. I
Three-month
wouldn't recommend more than
three-month
that.
moratorium. I just want to make sure that it's beyond just educating our planning board, which we
It
should be
is.
doing now.
Right.
On
Well,
the-
we
On
would,
the issue of the moratorium, just by happenstance, I was talking to the town attorney, and Paul DeChance, who's the Southhold town attorney, we were just talking yesterday, and he brought up that Southhold was trying to do a moratorium on battery storage, too. And the planning commission was real reluctant. And so we can reach out to Annie, or we can get their reports just to see. We may have a little test case in front of us here.
right.
as to-
Well, I think we would meet the basic requirements in that we have a reasonable timeframe. We have a valid public purpose. We are addressing a situation that we're of, you know, the public safety impacts.
Yeah.
We would adhere to the procedure, which is related to the planning commission.
Generally, they
And
don't have
we
an
definitely
issue
have an
if it's short.
expiration date.
If it's
And
6
those are
months, I
the,
think
you know,
it'd be fine.
basic parameters to making sure that you're doing it, you know, within the confines of what the law allows you to do.
I think Southhold was reaching for a year, right?
I think they were reaching for a year. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know
but
Do
exactly.
they have a law though on the books already?
I
I don't know if they
It was
do.
just, I was just having I wasn't.
We do, so
even-
that's why I would recommend.
I wasn't
short.
talking to him about that, it just came up,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and he
And
just
does it
mentioned
matter
it,
that-
so. I'll get their proposed laws and what, you know, I either get from Andy or I'll get from Paul.
There's one
What
applicant, it doesn't
the
matter
commission's
that one
concerns
applicant
are.
would be affected by a moratorium?
I'm sorry?
Would this one applicant be singled out by a moratorium?
Everyone
Not
is.
necessarily,
I know everyone
because
is,
that
but
applicant has a
effectively,
report,
it
and
would
that
be one
report
applicant.
indicates that
we're not.
they're not meeting the requirements.
Mhm.
So the trajectory of that application is a denial if they can't meet the requirements, right? So I don't know that this is
So it could
geared toward
benefit
that.
them in some odd way?
I
If
don't
the code
know.
gets revised in a way that they might be able to meet.
I mean,
Yeah.
who knows?
You know, I just think that, being like, we want a moratorium is fine, but then understanding that the moratorium does end and battery storage is a real use that needs to be.
I think we all
But they
hear.
all want that. But
Yeah,
don't-
we all
don't-
want it.
I
I
want
just,
them at
this
all
is for the
sounding like they
public's
don't want it.
sake
They
who's
do.
listening to this, because the public also tends to think like, we're gonna stop this, we don't want anything like this anymore, you know? And this is really a pause, like you're saying, and not it's an interim step to ensure that what we're saying here is accurate
This is
and
to alleviate their
technically correct.
concerns, right? It's
Right,
to-
but I mean, it
it's to-
doesn't mean that we've just thrown battery storage
No, but it's to
out.
say,
Of
okay, we
course
took a
not. Yeah,
pause,
no. Well,
we weighed
that's
all
not
of these things
realistic.
in, we dotted our i's and crossed our t's, and
We-
this is where we're at.
Sure, and we tried to do that in the first place, I wanna mention.
I'm not saying you
know.
didn't.
One of these proposals is moving forward.
One of them is already on the
One of
track
those
to
approved.
approval, and it's
Correct.
right next to a substation, and if LIPA owned that property, I can almost guarantee they would do it anyway, without our citing
Yeah.
criteria. So, we'll see, but I'm happy to draft the resolution, it would have to be a walk-on, if you wanna entertain it for the next agenda, or it could be the next one after
Can I ask
that.
what kind of training that they're gonna get? battery
There's like a,
storage, Does something exist?
Well, first
Is
of
it
all, I know
safety?
that
Is it-
Lynn knows a lot about this. Lynn Arthur, who does a lot of this, knows a lot about batteries per se and obviously electricity. But she could come and do something. That's number one. Number two, there was something that was brought up recently. What was it? There was an.
It was-
There's a,
company that does this.
yeah, that
and
does a
we
training.
looked
There was
into
like a-
it and-
This training?
yeah,
and
I've
we-
reached out to
I
some
mean, it's
people
not
in the
cheap,
industry
but
to
we'll-
get,
We have to budget it for 7 members.
Is that
And
actual
our fire
in-person
people just
training or
went to
online
something.
training, or?
I believe that one was online.
Is it online?
I think so.
I just looked at the budget.
So I've just been trying to
so-
find different, because, right, because NYSERDA is very, I think they had some NYSERDA training, but they found it very technical, and they want something more practical, something that's more planning-based, so we're trying to find, different avenues for them, and I think I found a couple of consultants, and also that one training that I forwarded to you for them.
And there'll probably be
So
more
the
things
tech-
that develop over time that they can take advantage of as they go, but at least they'll feel like they have some base of knowledge so that
So
they
the
can process these.
Position here
responses.
is that the technology has changed to that degree in the months that we've.
I don't
you know,
necessarily know if it's the
that-
No, I think-
technology
in
by
order for
itself,
that,
it's the
we need to take a
practicality.
pause, we need to take a look at the code that we just instituted and
It's how it's working.
train our planning board members in order to cite these things to address noise, setback, sighting,
Yeah.
and safety.
Oh, yeah. and,
Didn't we not, I mean,
Yeah.
we did this.
Yeah, but I
don't
think it's
mean
like
to-
anything, once
I
you
just-
start
I-
doing
I-
it, questions arise.
Well, I heard it once from a recent public hearing that someone said that they were gonna put a cot next to the thing and sleep there, because of the location that it was being cited in one of our particular hamlets.
I
Okay.
mean, we can be more
So-
specific about where these systems are appropriate, but again, you usually cast a wide net so
Right.
that you have a level playing field. You don't make it so that someone gets a windfall and someone else has no opportunity. You know what I mean? We try to make it very broad, but for a very specific reason, in that we don't want challenges that you've made this just so one guy can do it and I can't. And, those things are real. These are truly things that people say. So we try to be broad, but we can try to at least, drill it back into, well, here's a substation, and if you were any more than this many feet away, you would need another substation, so you can't be there, or those more specific criteria, which I know the planning board has been very clear to me that they, at least the chair, to say they wanted us to much more closely point out where, instead of just,
And how about the
anywhere.
residential
And it's not
battery?
really anywhere, we do have the avoidance areas, but maybe we need to add some more places to that.
Okay, and the residential installations?
Residential installations
So
are
that would
still,
not
I
be
think,
effective.
now, that's enough, that you might want to exempt, because there is these are all different sections of the code. So you have a section that allows just somebody to put individual storage systems at a rating of not more than 20 kilowatt hours. So that's just batteries in your basement. People
reasonable.
are
So you might
building
wanna
the
exempt
Tesla walls in their basement, you know, and we still are meeting the building code and the
That's
fire
true. If they
prevention
have solar
code.
panels,
Yeah.
So
they can
I would
store it.
recommend you exempt those.
Yeah.
Because
just
then
looking
you're,
at the-
you know,
we're
you're
just
not,
looking at the
you're looking at the large
You can
scale,
exempt those
utility
from the
scale.
moratorium.
Yeah, I would exempt, the moratorium wouldn't even be on chapter 123. So this code had multiple sections that you were dealing with. The
looking at
moratorium
the ones
wouldn't
over
even be
600.
chapter 123, which is
These are the
about
more large
just
scale.
single family.
Or the
We're
range.
talking about the special exception ones,
We
the large
differentiate.
ones,
The large ones.
yeah. And that's under 330-162.21.
Well, why don't you write it up? And then we're gonna try to walk this on, or just do it at the next
I don't
meeting?
I could do it at the next meeting if you're, you know, I don't think anyone
Prefer
we're
that
really
to
in any
walk on.
peril.
I would love for the sponsor to give input on this. I mean,
That's me.
the sponsor of the original
Oh.
code that was created
Oh, John?
last year, yeah. Before we
Did you
start.
talk to them?
I did talk to John about this.
Okay, so how about we don't do it so immediately, like
Right.
Tuesday, and I'll develop it
For the
and we'll
following
have
meeting,
yeah.
chance to look at it.
And you can
Okay.
you can maybe circulate it to all of us and.
Sure.
This way,
And please,
I can
like,
watch the
reach out
planning
to the
board
board,
meeting
the
where they
planning board
discuss
members
this
too,
and
so you can
read
hear
the
from
report.
them.
I mean, if you wanna come to us at the work session, it's in the draft packet, and just explain
Maybe we can have Jackie
how
with
you've
that
written it.
one.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Good.
All right,
Sounds
thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Not to give you anything else to do, Travis.
Add to the list.
It's not, it's not due this weekend.
Enact it, pause it,
We're just gonna put her,
reenact it,
we're gonna put her in a duplicating machine.
rinse and repeat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rinse and repeat. All right, yeah, all right, so,
I'm actually on time.
I guess updates, I don't really have anything.
Yeah, I just have, the Great East End cleanup is coming up. If you can sign up, it's on our website, April 22nd and 23rd. We had, a couple hundred people last year involved. It's getting bigger and bigger after COVID. So if we get a few more teams out there, I'll be visiting quite a few groups on Saturday to thank them for their dedication. Our local beaches, our parks, our roadways are all getting cleaned up by volunteers. So more the merrier. If you can come out and sign up, it'd be great.
I just have two quick things. One is the Hometown Heroes banner program. There are still a few spots left. I would think the cutoff would be no later than May 1st if you wanted to get one in. And then as the liaison to the trustees, I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that they did have a meeting on Monday. They walked on a resolution to add money to their part-time budgets. The resolution that they walked on stated that they were short money for the piping plover program. So if you get any phone calls or any concerns, I just want to make you aware that I did reach out to them and as did the controller. The piping plover program was fully funded. They actually hired, I think, 2 other additional part-time employees outside of the plover program, and the money that they put in will cover those employees. But we actually increased their part-time budget by 10% this year, so,
In the 23 budget,
Yes.
over 22,
yes.
but the resolution said we cut it.
They said we did not fully fund the piping, and they went on about how it was a very important program, and they were doing the right thing, and we know it's a very important program, and that is why we fully funded it. And
I mean, when you do budgets, you do your best to predict what the future holds. You don't really know if it's gonna be a lot of plover nesting that particular year coming, and you need to add more people. And so you take within the budget and you say, okay, there's things that maybe we're not doing this year that are funded, that we can shift it over. I don't think that we
we fully
didn't
funded the
properly
program.
fund
No, we
the
fully funded
trustees.
it.
And I did raise that issue with Scott yesterday on a phone call, that, it wasn't really fair to say that we didn't properly fund it. We do that with our own budget. Sometimes one line goes over and another line goes under, and we shift money around to deal with that. So I've asked him to sort of refrain from that sort of language. We'll see if that happens.
I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention in
Yeah.
case you're asked that we did fully fund that program.
Okay, no, that's good. And, well, Tommy John, you have anything you want to
At
share?
this time.
I know you were involved with the swearing in ceremony at the youth court.
Mhm.
I saw you there, that was very nice, and thank you for that. And I thought Lynn Nylas did a very nice job, and it looks like we have a good crew of people in our youth court. If you wanted to say anything about that.
It's a very popular program, good for kids. I know, Rick, you're the liaison to the Youth Bureau, and Cindy was there as well. And I don't know, we swore in probably about 25 kids into our
Yeah, there were
youth court program.
61 kids on the list.
Yeah, it was
And,
good.
well,
It was nice.
you know, they definitely have it's a popular program, and it's great for kids, and it's great for them moving forward in their lives.
You know, and the blinking light started again, as people are aware, up at Canoe Place Road, and it seems like it's working, it's helping. I know, Cindy, you
I was there Monday morning.
were there Monday morning. We started at April 3rd. You know, it's highway and it's police, and I don't think we're doing anything yet in the afternoons. You know, we're still doing our best to relieve traffic, and we still haven't gotten the report from Tom about when we blinked all those lights on County Road 39, though I'm not optimistic that it made any positive change. But, you know, if people have other suggestions of things that we could try, you know, traffic is bad again. And I know whenever there's an accident, it gets particularly bad, and obviously, you know, people typically understand that, but you know, I have asked the police for some emergency routing plans, so that if we have areas where, you know, we have seen accidents happen more frequently perhaps than others, that we have a plan in place that we can execute to say, these are the roads that we're going to divert traffic down to help traffic flow. And, you know, there might be some places we need to create connector roads, and we are doing the Greenfield Road subdivision, that road off of Hill Station Road that will lead into that community, or lead out of that community, but could be reversed to lead in an emergency. So things like that may help on those emergency situations.
You know, on that note, like this morning, for instance, Pleasure Drive in Flanders and Route 24 was
Yeah,
backed
Flanders
up
are bad.
incredibly this morning, and the people in Flanders have a tough challenge. Pleasure Drive was backed up tremendously. Coming down 24, they take the side roads to try to cut through. You know, we've had PD there last year. They worked on it diligently, try to keep people from cutting through, but they're interrupting with school buses. We have semis going down the middle lane. I mean, it's dangerous. And we've asked the county to help us out there, and they have done nothing.
What's it, is it county or state? Because
Or
it's
state.
24 is
State.
state.
State, they will send the state troopers once in a while to patrol to make sure they're not using the center lane.
We
But
could
it's
try
just-
blinking those lights. Again, it's manpower, and I think the state would be looking for us to make some sort of emergency declaration to say that we have an emergency and we're going to blink, we're gonna take over those two lights and put them on blink because of fire safety, ambulance, public safety. So we could potentially do that. We could try it, or maybe when it backs up to a certain point where we feel like it would take too long for us to get an ambulance or police car out to somebody in need.
Well,
I
27
honestly don't know, though, it's gonna solve much of a problem, other than moving that 24 traffic to Sunrise to get stuck again.
Or
Well,
into other back
It
roads.
leaves Sunrise. I mean, the apps on your phone, they make a decision when you are pretty much just past West
Or
Hampton.
they send you up Pleasure Drive.
And then when you get these quag, you either cut and go to Montauk Highway, or you get right off to Pleasure Drive, come down 24. Whatever will save you 3 minutes, you know, and it's terrible.
Yeah,
And then while we're talking about traffic and
You know, people
energy-
going, by the way, people go down Dune Road.
Yeah, they do.
They go down Dune Road all the way to the Ponquag Bridge and come up that way. It's crazy, but
So our town engineer is going to a Department of Energy conference in DC. I think he's leaving Friday. He is riding his bicycle there and back.
Is he really?
Yes.
To where, to DC?
Did he-
Yes, to a Department of Energy convention.
Wow.
No. And well, he does ride his bike to work, I think from the North Fork he lives.
Yeah.
A lot of times he'll drive to Flanders then
And
he
I
rides us
sometimes
in
wonder
from
whether
there,
he
but-
gets here faster by bicycle than by
I
car.
think he does some mornings.
How do you ride that?
I don't know. Well, he said he was going to take the train, I think, to the city, take a ferry to Staten Island, and then bike from there. And I said, how sad is it that you can ride your bike from Staten Island to DC, but you can't get off the island?
Yeah, that is
Then
sad.
what roads you-
He said he didn't want to deal with 25.
So we are gonna schedule a work session too on another matter. We got this $2 million grant, it's just shy of $2 million from the state on ADUs, accessory dwelling units, which is sort of the low-hanging fruit in a way with creating affordable housing. We know how challenging it is when we take a property that would only, under zoning, have one house or two houses, and we try to build 20 or 30 units. Creating apartments within existing dwellings and garages, basements and things like that does tend to spread it out, and is potentially a way to get apartments very close to where people are actually working. So we have a $2 million grant. We're working with CDC-LI, Community Development Corporation of Long Island, as our administrator. But we have to make some changes to the code because, our code is pretty restrictive in terms of creating accessory dwelling units. So we're going to have Kara in, and we'll have CDC come in and work with us so that we can talk about modifications to our accessory apartment law. So right now we have restrictions. Certain communities, you're not allowed to do them at all, unless you have over 3/4 of an acre. Other areas, you can do them at half an acre. But there's a lot of conditions, and that's sort of why people aren't really putting in accessory apartments. The homeowner has to be year-round. Well, why does the homeowner need to be year-round, right? Could you have a homeowner who spends some of the year in another community, still have an accessory apartment that's year-round? That's a board decision, right? But we have a real problem, as we all know, with a lack of housing for our workforce, and so we might have to really take a hard look at some of these issues and say, we need to open that door a little bit and not force us to have just the concentrated developments, the apartment buildings. So I'm setting that up. All right, so any other things for the board? All right, so we do have executive session. Executive session will be for confidential legal advice, personnel, and contracts. But before we do that, I just wanted to take a moment to wish everybody of the Jewish faith a happy Passover, and also the Christian faith a wonderful Easter holiday. It's a really important time of year for everybody, and as you enjoy your family and friends, just of course be careful driving and all the things I normally say. But I really want everybody to have a wonderful holiday season.
So that was a great reminder, because we do have two events in Hampton Bays this weekend. Saturday morning, there is pancake breakfast and an egg hunt at the Hampton Bays Ambulance, and in the midday, we have the Chamber of Commerce Great Egg Hunt. So I'd be in trouble if I didn't mention
Yeah,
that, so
no,
thank you.
good.
Like good grandpa.
At Good Ground Park.
That's great. All right. So to everybody, happy holiday, and to the board, we're going to make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a second on that motion?
No, I'll second it.
Yeah.
Second.